The Retirement Halftime Show. Maintain your lead in retirement.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. I am your host, Alexander Joyce, and we want to discuss what we call the two distinct phases of anyone's financial life. We routinely see that people that are climbing this mountain and are on their way to retirement are still taking the same amount of risk or prioritizing their finances the same way when they're climbing this mountain, the same way they do or are going to as they come down. But what we really want to understand is the priorities are much different, right? Because when you're climbing this mountain, there's two main priorities. That's accumulation and growth, right? So you've got your 401k that you were told to maximize the growth on it or put as much money as you possibly can into it, or start a self-directed IRA, a Roth IRA. You're looking for ways to save as much money as possible because you want to retire, right? So that's the main thing. But what I want us to do, and the reason we use this mountain concept, if you would, is because it's easy to understand, right? So now let's consider what we call Mount Everest, right? So a lot of adrenaline climbing that mountain, a lot of energy on your way up. You finally reach to the top, you've done it, right? You celebrate, but a lot of injury and a lot of accident and a lot of deaths occur coming down. So when we're climbing this mountain to retirement, it's the same concept. You've got a lot of energy. You've got a routine life, right? You do the same thing you've been doing for the last 30, 40, 50 years. You reach the top of the mountain, you're retired. You celebrate. Now coming down is very different. Can be very frustrating, very difficult, and that's where a lot of accidents and injuries occur. So when we're looking at the distribution phase, again, what we'll call the second distinct phase of a financial life, our priorities, the number one is creating your income, which is much different because when you're in that accumulation phase, you relied on your earned income, not your real ability to earn income from your job. But when you get to the top of the mountain, it isn't necessarily that you physically don't want to do it. It's that your desire to want to go to work or continue doing that has changed, right? So the first thing we want to understand is, how do we create income from our own assets? That's one of the biggest concerns that individuals have, because truly, it doesn't matter how big that pile of money is, if it's Joe Schmo down the street with $10 million or him or her down the street with $100,000. The concern is still the same. Do we have enough? Have we saved enough? And what is the likelihood that we'll outlive that money? That's the true concern, especially as individuals age every single year and we're all living longer with changes in technology. The concern is, how do we take that money from our portfolio, stretch it out as long as we possibly can, with the understanding we're going to live longer and the possibility of longevity risk coming into play. That's a concern. Wealth protection. What are the ways that we need to preserve some of that wealth? Of course, as we age or get older, becoming more conservative always is a challenge, if you would. A lot of people, when they reach the top of the mountain and they retire, they kind of forget what it took, if you will, to get them there. So they naturally say, you know what, at this point, taking a lot of risk in our portfolio isn't something that we're comfortable with. So why don't we just go to a more fixed income position or an interest bearing account? That could be challenging. Understand that inflation ticks up near 3% and you're only getting 1%. You're actually losing 2% with purchasing power. That is a risk. It's inflation risk. So we need to make sure, as we consider preserving some of that principal, we need to understand that hedging long-term or hedging inflation is still something that is needed to keep up with purchasing power, right? So that again is one of the main priorities in that second phase, or that second distinct phase of your financial life. Asset preservation and growth, as we just mentioned. We have to understand or sit down with an advisor to see the options that are available to us to keep up with inflation, have fixed income and growth, having that well-balanced, well-diversified portfolio. That's what we need to understand. Having a plan in retirement, as opposed to just shoveling away at our principal or shoveling away from our assets with no real plan, if you will, no direction of a true retirement. That's important. Legacy planning. One of the things we've always asked our clients, or one of the things that you may hear us say a lot, is, what is the purpose of the assets? Is it live on or is it leave on? To us, those are two very different, distinct asset classes. So we need to make sure we're asking those questions so we can get it right the first time. Tax efficiency, with the understanding that when you're climbing this mountain in the first phase, a lot of this money that you've been saving is qualified, which means it's never been taxed. So we need to understand the possibilities of how taxation could erode the principal, how fees could erode some of your overall assets, and how taxes play a part in the portfolio. So having a well-defined tax plan in your portfolio is extremely important as well. Planning is extremely important. We've always said that, most individuals don't have a plan in retirement, a true retirement plan. And if they do have a plan, they don't have a tax plan. And if they got a plan and a tax plan, they don't have an estate plan. So understanding the total holistic approach of what your retirement looks like is important. Shielding the assets from things like long-term care, longevity planning, longevity risk is a real concern in retirement. So the fact is, what we need to understand is there are two sides to this, right? The accumulation phase is the first distinct phase in your retirement. The distribution phase is the second phase. Like we've said in the theme of our show, you can't play a game the same way the second half, the same way you did the first, especially if you've got the lead. A lot of us have that lead in retirement. So if we do, what do? We maintain that lead in retirement. You play defense. Understanding the two distinct phases in an overall retirement plan is important. If you've got any questions, just give us a call. Check out our website. Stay tuned. There's more show to come.
The Retirement Halftime Show. Maintain your lead in retirement.
There's some things in life we can always get back. Money, that's one of them. But time, that can never be replaced. Your kids, grandkids, they don't care how big your house is or the type of car you drive. The time they spend with you, that's what matters most. Allow us to help take your financial concerns away so you can enjoy the more important things in life. Call us today at 317-903-9157. Schedule a no-obligation visit and rejoice in your retirement.